feature presentation.
Welcome back to another Untitled streaming review. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside. He's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
If I only could, Matt, I'd be running up that hill.
Running up that hill. I've never heard of this person before this show, so my first exposure to...
I've literally talked about her at least 2 or 3 times, probably on a regular podcast.
I don't listen to you. I don't listen to you.
I know.
I mean, we talk about so much on these fucking
I
shows
know.
that I have no idea what we talked about in the Top Gun Maverick review, which we just recorded, which you guys can check out right now. We're back. Hey, everybody. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
You know, Eric had COVID. I had COVID. We've been kind of sporadic over the last month and a half to 2 months, but we are back and putting out a metric shit ton of stuff, and happy to be back. So you are now listening or watching our Stranger Things 4 review in progress. We're not going to give a score because it is an incomplete season. We're reviewing part 1. Some people have reviewed part 1, but it's still part of Stranger Things 4, so we're not going to put a score on it. We have
no
our Top
score
Gun
on 4.
We have our Top Gun Maverick review, which you guys can check out right now. A new episode of the Untitled Movie Podcast where Eric and I talk about, both having, Eric already talked about him having COVID, but me having COVID and what's been going on the last little while, the Bachelor party and other things like that. But happy to be back. Happy to be talking about Stranger Things 4. Is now streaming on Netflix. You can watch all of part 1, all 87 hours of it. And I'm excited to talk about it with Eric. Eric, are we going spoilers on this since it's been out for a while? Or
I think
light
we
spoilers?
can, and as long as we say up front, we are going to be talking about spoilers and we'll also maybe do in the write-up say that
we'll
there
do
are
a spoiler warning.
spoilers.
Yeah.
But at this point, if you haven't watched it,
which I understand because it's a lot.
A gazillion hours of this is going to be our main criticism through this entire review, is that it's way too fucking long and that it's also just a slog at times. Matt, I don't even have the energy. I felt like watching this, like it truly was a chore to the point where at the end of, what was it? There's 7 episodes for this season, or 6? I mean, it felt like there were 12, but
7. Yeah,
7. Yeah. 7-11. And so with that, like, it felt like watching the first 2 episodes of this new season. About halfway through each episode, it felt almost like there was this weird sort of disconnect where it's like I was taken out of
this should be over by now.
No. It's like, wait, how many episodes have I been watching? And it's like, this is only 1 still? Yeah, jeez, it feels like I've been watching 4. Yeah. And that's also partly because within these extended episodes, you have crammed in multiple subplots and an ensemble cast that, goes far beyond America, that goes across the ocean. So this season is not only bloated, but it's so pretentious in thinking what it's doing is meaningful and treating every character and storyline with a kind of reverie that is not earned. And you could cut out probably at least 2 or 3 of these storylines and still have
feel
too
bloated.
Much.
Yeah. I'm with you. So, I mean, Stranger Things 4 picks up a few years after Stranger Things 3, right? They're now
it's
in
1986.
Yeah.
The year of Top Gun, our Lord and Savior.
Oh, sick. That's awesome. I hope they go see
because there is a Tom Cruise reference as well, because Nancy has a poster in her room. Tom Cruise. Yeah.
I'm kind of with you. I mean, I will say that I think I'm a bigger Stranger Things fan than you. You like this series, but it's not
fine.
Like,
I've always
good. Popcorn entertainment.
I'm gonna get this out again.
Oh, you own it, so you.
I feel like every time we talk about Stranger Things, my biggest criticism, and this is also with this season, is that it's taking a lot of the nostalgia of growing up in the 80s and even into the early 90s, and because a lot of people still grew up with.
He's gone. the
Oh,
Vecna came and
geez.
destroyed his feed.
I was in
Go
the
ahead.
upside down there
Yeah.
for a second. But yeah, what I was saying is that every season and the show in general is built on nostalgia for things that the Duffer Brothers and Sean Levy grew up with in the 1980s. I mean, Sean Levy was actually a working actor at that time. So, you know, it's wearing its influence on its sleeve, which there's not anything wrong with that necessarily, but at the same time it never kind of creates its own world. It continues to borrow from other sources to the point where it never expands or does anything really interesting with that. And so the film I always reference is Jeff Nichols' Midnight Special, which I think does a lot of the same things, but at the same time it's only using them as the bones of the story, and then it's also creating sort of its
Its own thing.
own
Yeah.
mythology,
Mhm.
within that. Where with Stranger Things, seasons 1 through 4 part 1,
It's all
it
just
always feels like,
homage, and it's just
yeah,
like it's
let's
just
pick a
very on
theme
the
or movie
nose.
and expand on this. And like this seems to be like the Nightmare on Elm Street season, because
Mhm.
the kids are older now, so you can kind of play with more mature elements and be a little
Whether
bit
it's the
more.
violence or the horror or
Yeah.
the themes and relationships and
And
stuff
I
like
think
that.
some of the most interesting stuff in this movie, because it does feel like a movie, this show, is some of the satanic panic stuff, because it does feel like it's also referencing like the West Memphis Three and Damien Eccles specifically. There is one
Yeah.
character that's a part of this Hellfire Club that is basically,
Yeah.
the scapegoat for all of that. Playing Dungeons and Dragons, being considered satanic, or you're conjuring demons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like there is some interesting stuff there, but again, it's been done in other places in a more credible manner, or just again it
I
expands on its sort of point.
I agree with that. I've never had a issue with that because I feel like Stranger Things knows what it is, and it's never tried, to me personally, to be anything more than that.
That's where I
Where it
disagree
is
with you,
like,
though,
really, that's interesting because like
because
I've
I think
never.
I think it's emotional. I think the emotional weight it puts on its characters, especially in this season, feels like, oh, you've spent enough time with these characters now that you should be
Yeah,
completely
I get. Yeah,
engaged by them being in peril, or them having to do something in order to save the world. Like you're now invested in them as more than just archetypes. They're characters that you want to care for, and I don't. And I feel like a big thing that, and this is why I have a problem with the use of running up that hill, not because more people are hearing it for the first time, which I think is great. I think also, like, if Kate Bush makes some money off of this, that's
and can
fantastic
chart
as
in
well.
2022 number
Yeah.
one song. Yeah,
Hounds of Love is one of my favorite albums ever, and the way that I discovered her was through Peter Gabriel, because her and Peter Gabriel, specifically Peter Gabriel's So album, Don't Give Up, is one of the most beautiful duets I think I've ever heard, and that was kind of where I first heard her. And then you go back and you realize, oh well, she also did backup vocals for Games Without Frontiers, and she has her own kind of style, and even in John Hughes's "She's Having a Baby," there's this woman's work that's used as well. So like, I'm not trying to be like a gatekeeper or anything. The thing that I have a problem with is that the filmmakers really put everything onto not just this song, but all the music in terms of lifting the dramatic tension in moments. Like, it feels like the music is doing most of the heavy lifting, and to the point where it's like, this is supposed to be poignant, and now it's been elevated, quite literally, people being lifted and being brought back down to earth by this moment. And it's just so emotionally manipulative that it just kind of bothers me
right.
quite a bit, and it's awesome.
It doesn't bother me. I agree with you on the not really caring that much. I found myself on that side of things with, like, Sadie Sink's character's storyline with her losing her brother in the last season, and then kind
Billy.
of dealing with Billy, and her dealing with kind of the trauma of all of that, and even this villain Vecna, who is randomly targeting people who have
He's
had
Freddy
past.
Krueger.
Yeah, he is, but randomly targeting people with trauma, and I mean, it's to the point where
Teens with trauma, we should say, because he doesn't really
yes.
attack adults. So
Yes, I Robert Englund even being in this season, which is something that they do. They again wear it on their sleeve, like you said. It's very on the nose with its homage, and even to the point of casting people who were in these things that they're paying homage to in this season to be like, hey, if you didn't realize, it's Nightmare on Elm Street, and which I'm fine with because that's what this series is to me. To me, it's always been popcorn entertainment. I'm not really going here for intricate kind of drama or characters or anything like that. To me, I'm like, I want a fun throwback 80s fucking horror kind of popcorn thing. And then that's what I've always enjoyed Stranger Things for. And I've enjoyed all 3 seasons because of that. And I found myself with this season, I completely agree with the bloated part and the kind of having the A plot, B plot, C plot, D plot, E plot, F plot. And like, that's the biggest problem in the show. It's almost gotten too big for its own good, right? When you had that first couple seasons of it being that core cast of those kids dealing with things, very focused on them. You had the kind of adult crew with Winona Ryder and Joyce and Jim with David Harbour's character, but it was really focused on here are the kids, here are the adults, and how does this town deal with this small town dealing with this event, this demon coming in, and these kids having to deal with it. And I liked the homage, and I liked the music, and I like the products, the throwback, all the corny, easy, remember this thing from the 80s or
New
remember this
Coke,
thing.
everybody.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff worked for me because that's what the show was, right? And I feel like as the show's gotten bigger and bigger, it's sort of lost me a little bit. Like, and
Well, once it goes beyond Hawkins, right?
And that's the thing. So we've always talked about that. We kind of miss those movies and things where it's like small town in peril,
Arachnophobia, right?
Yeah, like small town having to deal with this thing, whether it's kids being involved. And now you have a bunch of things where I'm like, oh, I don't like this as much. The kids are older. I'm like, I don't like that they're all like 18 now.
And to be fair, I mean, I don't think it's completely their fault as well, because like you have to think like it's an awkward age, like when your kids transitioning into teens, like
where you're in 16 to 17-year-olds, 15 to 17-year-olds.
Yeah, like some people are going to be better to adapt to that than others, and like it's just an awkward phase.
And they're playing younger than they are too, right? Because they all grew up very quickly, and now they're playing. I think like 11's only supposed to be like 14 or something here, right? And like it's as those characters got older, it's a double-edged sword for me because like on one end, like I kind of like that the series has grown with them and it's gotten scarier and it's gotten more violent, and like Vecna I kind of think is cool even though he's just Freddy Krueger, and like I like how he possesses someone and murders them, and how like the visual of that I think is kind of cool, and I'm surprised
but it's so
how
repetitive.
Far, oh totally
right, like that's the other thing, like Freddy Krueger, like even though
he killed people in creative ways,
yeah, like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, like, you know, again, like any franchise, there are better ones, you know, and like the consistency isn't always there, especially with slasher movies.
But you go, oh, remember that kill, how he did that? Whether
but it's all the same. And like the first time it works, I guess, but even the CGI, like I feel like they need, like if they're truly going to embrace a lot of that stuff, like you need to go practical.
And and Vecna himself, I think, is done well because it is mostly practical.
He's so lazily designed, like he's not that
interesting
looking.
He
just kind of looks like a more mutated or roided up version of Freddy.
I don't disagree.
Sorry, but
this that's totally fine. I'm just saying the other side of it. Like I didn't
the upside down side of it.
I didn't dislike it as much as you did, but I still did not love it. Where I found myself going, okay, I don't like how the kids are a bit older now. Like I don't find it as interesting as when they were younger dealing with these things and the coming of age of it and like all of that. It is bloated in every sense of the word, whether it's the cast is bloated now because they keep having to add new characters each season and then having to try to build them out. It's bloated in runtime and it's bloated in plot, where it's like like anything that's gone on for 4 seasons or 4 movies, and you have to kind of try to do something different. A lot of the times you have to split up the characters to bring them back together in the final act, right? So we have that in this, but you have some characters that are in California, you have some that are in Hawkins, you have some that are in fucking Russia. You have something like, and it's just all over the place, in the point where it's like you can never focus on one group, and you, right when you start getting invested in one storyline, it rips you out of that and brings you to another one that you don't care about as much. And it's just like, okay, we
And it
know
stops and
Hopper.
starts, right? Because like as soon
Exactly.
as you get interested in one of the storylines you do like, you're quickly taken out of it unless it's doing, and this is another Mission Impossible comparison, especially to Ghost Protocol. It does a lot of cross-cutting in the first episode where you'll have, you know, two sets of characters having basically the same conversation, and it cuts back and forth between the two settings, you know, one in California and one in Hawkins.
I don't
And sort
mind
of,
that as much, but
I don't mind it, but like do it once, maybe twice. Don't
yeah,
keep doing it, because like it
Yeah.
feels like, oh, that's all you have, and like you're just going
Right.
back to the well again and again, and again it loses its meaning. It's like the same thing with the kills. It's like the first, you know, kill, which is kind of interesting, like thinking that the actor, she's the daughter of Casper Van Dien,
Sure.
which I didn't notice or know until afterwards. It kind of loses its impact, because it's just happening the same way over and
I
over
agree.
again, to the
The
point,
first time is kind of shocking, but then
yeah, where all
after,
the editing tricks in this as well to kind of like cut between all these storylines. It's like, how can we do it in a way that we can, you know, incorporate both of them at the same time and find symmetry within the conversations and things like that. And the conversations that they're having that are cutting back and forth really aren't that engaging or interesting. It's mostly either kind of underdeveloped relationship stuff, or it's kind of just exposition to get you to, you know, the next setting or
Yeah.
character background. You know, half of this is basically finding out who Vecna is and Victor
And
Creel.
Elle's backstory, and
Yeah,
like you
again,
don't,
more of Elle's
it's just,
backstory.
and you don't need it. Like, it's just like when you rip out one of the main characters from the rest of the cast and have her back in how she was in season 1, even though we didn't even get a lot of that. You got it through the flashbacks in season 1, but like having
What
even
did you
more of
do?
that, where
What did you
she's in this drab lab, where, you know, going through this repetitive kind of thing, speaking of repetitiveness, and then having Matthew Modine again, and you're just like, none of this shit
So
is
boring.
interesting. I don't need to know Elle's backstory. What I like about the show is Elle with her new friends, like trying to
The
save
stuff that
the
you've
fucking
already
town.
built up, you're, again, divide and conquer when it comes to screenwriting. I mean, you just recently watched the Lord of the Rings movies, so like
Yeah,
after
which
the
is,
Fellowship, where the characters split off, even though
guess what movie I like the least? Two Towers, when they're all fucking split up.
exactly.
I'm
The
like,
best stuff is when you have them all working together on something, because you've already built this ensemble. And the more characters, as you mentioned, you introduce or integrate into the storylines, and then the more kind of world building that you do outside of Hawkins, you lose the core elements of what the story is and what sort of, you know, fans kind of originally engaged with. And so again, like I think the strongest stuff here, like I actually I think it's more like, I think Sadie Sink is fine. A lot of people really seem to love the performance,
I
especially in this season, because of the trauma stuff, and that's,
I don't know.
she's
It's
okay.
fine.
She's fine.
That character I never cared about.
The stuff I like the most, that's kind of grown on me the most, that kind of feels the most organic, I really like Steve's arc. I think
Yeah,
Steve
same, man.
and
Steve
Dustin's
and Dustin,
relationship,
yeah.
even though Dustin is not my favorite character, I like them together. So
Yeah.
I like that kind of back and forth between them, and even including Maya Hawke's Robin. Like I think like
Robin is
those
great, yeah.
those three work really, really well together. And I really like how Steve has gone from being like, you know, the high school jock to kind of like being a little bit of a weirdo in his own kind
Yeah.
of thing, and kind of, you know, relating to people that are kind of on the fringes of
And then
this
having to be
small
the
town.
adult of the group. Like, I
Yeah,
just kind of,
and that kind of feels to me like the best stuff in there. And
I
like,
totally agree. That group of people, if you're ranking what the plots are, and those are the people that are in Hawkins and dealing with it in that town, and that group of people that you have, Dustin and Lucas and Max and that group of people that are there, Nancy and that
Which
group.
is also a
I
Nightmare on
think
Elm Street thing, because Nancy is the name of the Heather
absolutely.
Langenkamp character.
That group I think is the most interesting stuff. And then you have the fucking skeleton crew of like
The lanky
Jonathan
boys.
and the lanky boys running around, who was with 11, but then 11 gets ripped out. And right when 11 gets ripped out, then you have the Skeletor crew all running around. And I'm like, I don't care about any of you guys. I kind of like the stoner guy that they bring in, but like even that's a little one note. And like and again, adding another new character, which you just kind of don't need at this point because there's already so many people. So then you have skeleton crew running around and you're like, all right, I don't really care about them. Then you have Elle at the lab and you're like, all right, I don't need more fucking why they're experimenting on these kids. All right, I don't need
You got to
this.
get your powers
And then-
back, but in order to do that, you need to learn more about your backstory.
I don't. And then you have Jim Hopper, who we know survived because they revealed it in trailers and stuff like that. So you kind of
even at the end of season 3, right? They
you
hinted
completely undercut, his sacrifice at the end of season 3 to immediately bring him back. I get it. But like, then you have him in the prison, which at times I liked, but the more it went on, I'm like, okay, we're really going to have him escape, then go back and then almost escape again. And then you have
Eat
Joyce
some peanut butter.
Yeah, then you have Joyce and what's his fuck Brett Gelman's character, Murray. And Brett Gelman I love, but I almost had too much of him even in season 3 where with Alexi, and it was Alexi, right? Like and that whole plot line where I'm like, I love Brett Gelman, but like I liked him when he popped up in an episode in the early seasons, and like
but now
he's
incorporating
zany
him more into
the main cast
show, and then also like the stuff with like him and Joyce,
and all the Russia stuff and the horrible accents, and just like it's
and even like the stuff getting to Alaska, it's just
all the shit could have been cut. Like all of it could have been, and like
and you wouldn't lose anything either.
It takes so long for them to get to Hopper, and for Hopper just basically them killing time of him being in this prison and almost escaping and coming back and
then escaping, but then getting caught again.
And it's just like you're really just killing time to get to those last 2 episodes where you finally bring him back and everyone comes together to fight Vecna.
And even the reveal of who Vecna is, it's like
it's obvious, but like I liked where it ended up. I will give it that, because at least it all came full circle where I'm like, all right, I knew.
But you also liked where Moon Knight stopped, and then when we watched the last couple of episodes, I was like, oh, that's disappointing.
That doesn't work. Yeah. And like that's where I'm kind of I feel about this, right? Like I didn't mind that whole last episode of part 1 where they reveal Henry Creel and him being one who then becomes Vecna, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool and gives Elle stakes and makes like all of the backstory stuff somewhat worth it. The biggest thing, it goes back to our main point of why we didn't like this season really so far, is the bloatedness of it all, where it takes so long to get there. And to your point of, you could have cut out 40% of this, and I feel like you could have got to the same spot a little tighter. And I just feel like, a lot of that stuff with the skeleton crew, a lot of the stuff with Joyce,
how they incorporate Susie into this is terrible. Like, it was the worst part. And there is a moment where watching it, like the CGI backdrop when she's climbing on the roof to adjust the satellite or like the antenna, is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. And you're watching this and thinking, Netflix has been having some financial problems recently, but I'm sure they put a lot of money into this. And it's like,
well, this is their biggest thing, right?
Yeah. And you would think that they would have put, enough money to make this look good. And there are moments where it's like, man,
I think it mostly looks good, but
I know, but there's moments like that where it's like, wow, that really is standing
the upside
out
down is kind of ugly. Like
in thumb. So
them going into the upside down, like I know that's something that you had to get to at some point, and you had already Will be in there, and Will is
the worst.
Agnes Varda haircut. People
the
keep
mushroom
saying.
cut is terrible, but he's just such like, for a character that's supposed to be meaningful, because like obviously like the whole thing that they're doing with him is like they're basically keeping his sexuality ambiguous, even though he is probably gay. And it just is like, again, like that's not really a big reveal or anything worth keeping like a secret. It's just like, leave it
unless you actually explore that, then
you're not
which is, that's what I mean. Like if you don't actually have him discuss that, then I feel like that's all kind of
And
bullshit.
then there are even
Um,
more subplots where you have Rob Morgan's character becoming the sheriff, and then you have this
oh
kind of
yeah,
vigilante group of frat boys
I know,
who
man. There's
go
so
out on the
much going
town.
on.
And then you have 11 kind of dealing with, you know, life as a high schooler, and
Yeah.
also being picked on by this blonde girl named Angela, and sort of how sort of violent that ends up being at this roller rink sequence. So there's just so much going on, and it's just jam packed. And part of it is, again, like, they're probably thinking like, okay, well, they're at that age now where they're still growing, and the actors specifically, and like, we can't
Only have
continue
them for so
this.
long.
Yeah, we can't have them playing, although they could really. We can't have them being, 30-year-olds playing high schoolers.
It's been done before.
It has, but to my thinking,
It's
it's like,
getting even close at this point. Like, they
yeah.
all almost look too old for the ages that they're playing.
Yeah, they basically look like they could be like teachers or something like that at
Yeah,
this point. Even with Will, again, with the bad mushroom cut, it's just like, okay, that does not make him look any younger. And I know, like, the idea is like he's kind of almost maybe in some ways regressing and wanting to stay in that childhood kind of way, but it just, again, it doesn't work, and it just feels like at this point they are overcompensating with as much style as they can, with as many characters as they can, whether they be new or old. I do like Eddie. I mentioned that as well.
I
Joseph
liked
Quinn.
Eddie too. Yeah,
Like, he, I think, works in sort of
a
bringing
good
him in.
addition. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the performance is good, but yeah, most of this is just like extraneous, and it kind of feels like the whole build up, you're waiting for everybody to get back together. And like, I know, like, part of the complaint with like something like Twin Peaks: The Return was like, why isn't Cooper, and why isn't he in Twin
Sure.
Peaks? But David Lynch was very strategic with that, where the strategy is, okay, we're building up to like one final climactic battle between, the town of
Everyone will
Hawkins
come
and
together. Yeah. Like,
Vecna.
and
So
you know where it's going. It's just taking so long to get there. And I'm
yeah.
not saying you have to snap your fingers and it's all everyone's together and you do it. And you don't want the same shit over and over again. But sometimes you do for something like this, where I'm like, I don't know if you need to, like, again, you try so hard to, do something different. So you need to separate the characters and you need to go to different locations and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like there are ways you can do it with having, the crew together and still splitting them up in certain scenarios and things like that, which you've done in other seasons too. And like, I feel like it's just missing a vibe. Like, season 3 had the mall, there was the arcade in another thing. Like, this is just missing like a location. They have the house, right, which is basically the house from It, or the house from fucking
Amityville or
Amityville or
yeah.
anything, right? And they're there for a little bit of it, but I just feel like it's missing, part of the why people like this show is for that nostalgic kind of 80s, very obvious in your face references and things like that. And I feel like this season is sort of missing that, in the sense where it doesn't have that one central location or something like that where I can kind of like get invested into it. And I think that's because there are so many different like plots and areas that these people are going to, that it just goes back to being hard. It's hard to get invested into one plot line because it rips you out of it and sends you to something else right when you start to get invested. And
It's like
that's
an anthology series or
it's
movie
like
in a way.
the pacing is just not great. And I don't know how you solve that, whether it's, we've talked about like, um, Netflix can never go back because their whole model was you get it all at once.
But they gotta go back.
You can consume it however you want, right? Which, for Netflix series, if you don't consume it in the first weekend, you're behind and you're gonna have it spoiled, or the conversation on Stranger Things is already pretty much done.
Yeah.
Like, which is wild. Like, we're a little bit behind because of COVID. I had COVID and stuff, and I mean, I watched this while I had COVID. Which made it even more miserable. No, I actually didn't hate the season. I just felt like, I don't know how you solve it, whether it was shorter episodes, but more of them that let me digest each thing a little bit more, and not have that exhaustion by the 45-minute mark, because I really found myself, without fail, when it was supposed to end, which is when a TV show should end, is between the 45-minute mark and the 55-minute mark, right? When it comes to modern dramas on television. And I found myself at the 45-minute mark or the 55-minute mark. That would be the point where Nevis and I would have to pause it, or I'd have to go to the bathroom, or I would check to see how much time is left. And I go, fuck, there's still half an hour. And I'm like, it's just, it's like a mindset thing where movies, I know I'm sitting down and I'm in for 2.5 hours, and that's going to be my experience, and I can move on and watch something else, or wait a couple years to see a sequel, or watch the sequel when I want to. And I know that that's what I'm in for. And when it comes to TV, it's just like, I know in the streaming age we can do whatever you want, but I'm like, this is almost a series of 7 movies. They're just as long as Petite Mama, and like and each one is at least, 70 minutes, if not more. The finale of part 1 is an hour and 40 minutes, right? And then like, it's just, it's too much, and I
And the
hate to be
payoff
that
isn't
guy.
satisfying in
Yeah.
any way, right? Like you're watching it and you're like, not only are you thinking, okay, well, that's enough for this episode, but also, once you've watched all 7, you're kind of thinking like, well, was that really worth all that time? And I feel like, again, like it has in a way overstayed its welcome. This is a show that started out kind of as fun and kind of
Should have been a
easygoing.
trilogy, yeah.
Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with making a limited series, or even a limited series that can continue. If you want to do a sequel limited series, like you can still do that, but the obligation of doing like, 5 to 6 seasons or whatever, how long this is going to be, you know, if you can't maintain that enthusiasm and that excitement and passion, um, you start to feel it, and you feel it in not only the length but also in the storylines and in the character development or the underdevelopment of these characters, and it just becomes almost, again, it's not entertainment anymore, it's a chore. It felt like this was homework, instead of enjoyment in any way whatsoever. And the moments, the crumbs that you do enjoy,
Victor
they're
Crumbs.
inconsistent, because again, you're pulled out of each kind of sort of subplot that you are enjoying and brought into another that either doesn't work for you, or when you do find something interesting in it, then you jump to another one. This thing has ADHD in the worst possible way, and it doesn't even feel like, with the editing and the storytelling, like the films and television it's referencing in the 1980s, because the storytelling in that period of time was much slower and methodical. And not that it was like an art house film or anything, but like it took its time in a different way. It took its time in sort of focusing on a key group of characters and just developing it from there. You look at the Nightmare on Elm Street films, they basically restart each movie. There's some continuity within like 3 to 5, but
Yeah.
it was basically just doing the same thing over and over again, with the exception of being creative with some of the kills and the practical effects and stuff
That's
like
almost all
that.
you need sometimes too, right?
Exactly.
But like,
You don't need to
don't
make a
overthink it, right? Like,
McDonald's Big Mac any more.
yeah.
It doesn't need to
It
be
was
an
tasty how
artisan.
it was, and I
Yeah.
like it every 2 weeks when I have one. It's like, so that's what I mean. Like, I hate to be, you hate to say like, oh, just give me the same thing over and over again. But with certain things, it's like, I'm not looking for anything more. And like, there are moments in this season that I liked. It's just, I think every time I found myself enjoying it, I was ripped from that with something I didn't like, which is not a good thing. Like,
Or a character
um,
that's obnoxious, like Yuri, who's this Russian
yeah,
pilot that's kind of like the go-between to get
to
Joyce and
Hopper,
Murray
yeah.
to Hopper in Russia. It's just like, again, you don't come to this show for like great sort of in-depth characters, but even as a caricature, he's very obnoxious.
Yeah, yeah. And then you have like Matthew Modine and Paul Reiser coming back, and I don't know if I needed any more of
I
either of
like
those
Paul
guys.
Reiser more than Matthew
So do
Modine.
I.
Matthew Modine is one of those guys that just kind of is like, there's nothing there.
Yeah, I
Like, I
agree.
mean, we were texting and we were laughing that there's so much in these 7 episodes that there's a moment where you literally see Matthew Modine tattooing uh one of the kids. Was it 11 that he was tattooing, or was it somebody else? Giving him
Or was it 1?
or
No.
what? Yeah.
I forget. He's tattooing someone.
Yeah,
but-
and it basically is kind of like, you know, the one episode of Lost that we always joke about is
Sure.
the episode where Jack gets his tattoos, and it's like
Yeah.
there's a whole episode dedicated to that, and it's like, okay, like network.
They don't
television
do
at
a whole
that point-
episode here, but
No,
yeah.
but it kind of feels like almost like a microcosm of that, where like in Lost, it's like they spent a whole episode revealing how Jack got his tattoos, and you're just like, you don't need that. And but
Especially 'cause
I
it
understand
wasn't
why they
important.
did that, because
Yeah.
they have 22 episodes to fill, you know, per season.
This
where
felt like 22 episodes in 7 episodes, and
and the payoff
yeah.
is not that gratifying or what have you.
Yeah, because it's only part 1, right? And I think it's so weird to have 7 episodes and then 2 episodes. It's like the weirdest split ever when it comes to part 1 and part 2.
It's got to be
And,
7-11. They should have done 7-11.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it more if it was like, you know, 18 episodes that were shorter, or if I would have liked it if it was week to week. Because even with the Boys just premiered, right? The first 3 episodes, and even that was too much for like one sitting. And I watched more than 3 episodes because they gave me more than the 3 episodes. So like I binged 5 episodes of The Boys, and just like I binged 7 episodes of this, and it's just not. It is personal preference, but like it is not the way I like watching things. Like I will get into a groove with a film series or something like that, but usually I will, you know, you go at your own pace, right? Like, and I feel like with TV, you have to consume it all at once if it's there, or else you're behind. And I do not like the binge model. I could have probably paced it out, but then I probably would have, you know, I wouldn't have gone back to it or something like that. I don't know. But um anyway, it's just, I don't know if a week to week thing would have saved how I felt about this part 1. And I am withholding judgment, just like, you know, with Dune, where this is very similar to probably, you know, our Dune review, in the sense I feel like we're sort of in the minority here of not really enjoying this part 1. But I will withhold judgment until I see those final 2 episodes, which they've said the finale is going to be 2.5 hours. And I'm like, at that point, just put it in theaters. Like, what are you doing? Like, just make it a movie. And like, I don't know, but I'm mixed. I'm very, very mixed, where I still ultimately enjoy the show. I still ultimately want to see where this season is going to finish up. But like, I have found myself, as each season continues, I feel like I care less and less about Stranger Things, and I'd be totally fine with no more after this. But I know we are getting a 5th and final season they've talked about.
So
and
this is going to be 5 in total, right?
Yeah, 5 total, and then I'm sure we'll get 20 years down the line them coming back. It'll be in the 2000s or something, and then or something.
They're listening
like
to
that.
Limp Bizkit and Puddle of Mud and
But anyways,
POD.
we're not going to give a rating to it because it's not finished yet, but we will come back and review those final 2 episodes, which are premiering in early July, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't hate the show or anything, but it's so shallow in its design and just how you kind of basically enjoy it. And like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, like, yeah, it would have been fine as a 30-minute episode. And you know what, I have to disagree with you. I think Netflix can go back to, you know, the weekly
Well, they've
thing.
never done the weekly thing.
Well,
right?
they kind of they did a little bit with the Fear Street films, where they released last year a Fear Street movie each week. Now, we were kind of mixed on those as well, but at least with those, they kind of spaced them out a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what, I mean, obviously they also share Stranger Thing cast members with Maya Hawke and Sadie Sink. So it kind of feels like, well, they can do that if they want to. And if they need to adapt in the future, which they're going to have to, maybe one of the things that they can do to adapt is release a couple of episodes per week of a show that is popular, and do the kind of, I don't mind binge watching either. I should say that. I think if it's a show that has had time to kind of like, be released and you're catching up to it later on and like you are into it and you kind of like, oh, I would like to watch the next episode, then you have it there. But there is something where, like you mentioned with Barry, where watching that week to week has truly been a pleasure. And like we're coming
I mean,
down
I
now
caught
to
up
the
on 3
last,
episodes last night, and that was fine because those are 29-minute episodes.
and you want
Like,
those movies to keep going or those
yeah.
episodes to keep going because they feel like mini movies, and especially the way that they're directed and what have you. But like they're so suspenseful and well sort of executed in its storytelling. And obviously Barry in Stranger Things are apples and oranges when it comes to
Very different, yeah.
the comparisons, but just in terms of how economic it is with its scripts and the length, like you want more, and you should, with something like Stranger Things, be wanting more. By the time
Yeah.
you get to
Barry is very
episodes,
restrained, where
yeah,
Stranger Things is not.
but by the end of episode 7, you should be wanting those last 2 episodes. You should be craving them. You should be like,
Where I'm glad I have a month between.
I'm so relieved that I got them done. I was just like, I can take a breather.
I got to that point. Nevis and I, it started. I was really glad it was back. Those first couple episodes, I was like, hell yeah, I'm back into this. The score is great. I kind of like Vecna. I'm kind of into this. And then I found myself, the more I binged and the more I fucking shoveled it into my gullet, like it makes you feel sick a little bit. Just like, it is junk food. We've always said Stranger Things is junk food. And like, it's when you have too much junk food, you're gonna feel a little ill. And that's what I felt by the end of it, is like it was too much at once. I liked certain bits and pieces here and there. It just didn't all come together like, and was tightly edited, and I don't know whether you needed to separate some of those storylines more
or cut them out completely.
Cut them out, yeah. Just tighten it up. But
I mean, even referencing Heather again, it's just like, like why are we back
not
here?
Heather, you mean the girl that died in the first season?
Yeah, the redhead.
Yeah.
See, it shows how much I love this show.
No, Beth, isn't it?
Beth.
Justice for Beth, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's just like, one, you feel so bad for the actor who's not even in the scene, but like they use like a prop dummy. And
No,
it's just
not
like,
Beth. What is it? Yeah, we both don't. Stranger Things. What was Justice for Barb? We got there. Everyone who likes this show is like, I like this show.
It's fine, but it goes to show you, like, we can't even remember the characters' names.
Yeah,
like Finn Wolfhard has an amazing real name, but I can never remember that his character name is Mike.
Yeah,
the only person I remember is 11 because it's a number, and like even like her real name Jane, it's just like, who's Jane again? And then it's like, oh, okay,
Jane
she's
Hopper,
Jane. Like,
I have this Stranger Things Cinnamon Toast Crunch box. It's like an 80s Cinnamon Toast Crunch box. So you like, come on. I'm a fan, guys. I bought a
so when
Cinnamon
people
Toast,
are complaining in the comments, they can go after me more than they go after you.
I'm like, I
Fuck
love
this guy for liking Midnight Special, a movie I've never even seen.
Midnight Special. I love. Nevis hates that movie. Hates it. Like, hates it with a passion.
Which is fine, but at least she gave it a chance.
Yeah. See, there's a little Demigorgon Cinnamon Toast Crunch on there. Anyways,
you know who would be amazing if Vecna had a cereal of his own, like Vector, the Vecna cereal box.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did that.
Vector should work with Netflix and Stranger Things.
With Vecna, those weird, like, gross looking fucking entries to the upside down, hilarious.
Oh yeah, the genitalia openings.
Yeah.
The other quick thing is, I will say that Vecna, on top of Freddy Krueger, kind of is a little bit like Pinhead from the Hellraiser.
Yeah,
movies.
A lot of people brought up Pinhead. Yeah. I don't know.
He's not a Cenobite though.
I will withhold final judgment until we get those final 2 episodes, and then we will put a score on it.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm like, it was exhausting by the end of it, and I enjoyed a little bit, but by the end, I was like, all right, I don't need any more of this right now. So I'm kind of glad for the break. Thank you all for watching or listening. I'm sure you weren't thrilled with our opinions on this. I mean, maybe some people who are watching this probably were like, all right,
if you liked it, that is great. Like, we should, again, like, we're never coming into this criticizing people who enjoyed it. And if you loved
I
it,
wish I did. Yeah.
I wish I had that enjoyment that you had. I'm actually kind of envious. So we're not criticizing you. Like, we should always make that, not that we need to make that clear, but
No, we don't.
we're not.
Fuck
We're
that.
not.
If you liked it, come on.
No. We're being critical of the material and not the people that enjoyed it. If you liked it, that's great. I wish
There's a lot to
I had
like in
enjoyed
there.
it.
I think there's something really fun in there. I just think it's extremely bloated.
Get me some Vecna cereal.
Please go check out the other stuff we have up right now. We have a new draft, not a draft. I keep saying draft. We haven't done one in so long. New episode of the Untitled Movie Podcast, where we talk about, what's been going on the last 2 months or so. Because Eric and I haven't really been able to record that much because of health reasons, COVID stuff, and wedding stuff, and all that jazz. So go check that out. We also have a Top Gun Maverick review that we would love for you guys to check out, and then we'll have a
lot of references to 1986 in that one too.
That's true. And then we'll have a lot of stuff over the next couple weeks. I am leaving to go get married on June 11th, so I will not be around for the majority of June. But we should have
you're here right now.
Yeah, we should have a couple reviews dropping during that time, a couple interviews dropping during that time. So it should be still some cool stuff coming. So keep an eye out for that. Best place to keep updated on everything, head over to Letterboxd. Our HQ is Untitled_movies. And you know where to find us: YouTube, podcast services, all that jazz. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at UntitledMoviePodcast.com. And you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Marchin. You can find more of my video reviews on RogersTV.com/CinemaScene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
1, 2, Vecna's coming for you. 3, 4, better lock the door. 5, 6, better sink us. 6.
Bye, everyone.